Welcome to my tutorial on how I draw video game characters, and today we're going to be drawing Nero from Devil May Cry 5. So let me know if you guys would like to see a more in-depth tutorial on how I draw faces in general, although I don't know if I'm qualified, but I will attempt. So we started off with a circle and a vertical line and a horizontal line. The horizontal line corresponds with his eyebrows and the vertical line corresponds with his nose, and here I'm kind of starting the nose at the eyebrow line, although these are just rough guidelines so they don't really have to be exact. Although it would be nice if they are exact, because like if a drawing doesn't look exactly how I like, sometimes I just get super demotivated and give up on the entire thing. So starting on the lips, I kind of like to look at the ends of the lips and see if one end is higher than the other, and make sure to draw at the correct angle, and also draw in the bottom of the lip as kind of a guideline for the size of his chin as well. And then now I'm kind of adding in some shading of the darkest areas, which I'm noticing, drawing in like the eye guidelines. So the shadows help me kind of place his facial features, especially under the eyes. So I'm drawing in where the shadows are, and then I can see the approximate size of the shadows and where his eyes fit relative to the shadow borders. I also look to see where the bottom of the nose lines up with the bottom of the shadow to try to approximate his cheek size, so I don't want too long of a distance between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the shadow of the eye, if that makes sense, so I can kind of give him the correct facial proportions. Ooh, it's starting to look a little scary here, so jump scare warning. This is usually the point where I decide if I want to keep going with this drawing or not. But I really wanted to challenge myself this time and to see if I can make it actually look like him, so bear with me as we make it through this ugly phase. In general, shadows really help me determine if I'm laying down the proportions correctly or if I need to adjust something, because they fill in his face, so it's like I'm not looking just at a piece of paper with like the outline of a face, because low-key I would not be able to tell if I was drawing things correctly. And they kind of help make my drawing look more like the reference also, so that's really helpful. In drawing the eyes, I also make sure that the angle is correct compared to the bottom of the nose and the sides of the mouth, almost imagining like drawing straight lines from the corners of his eyes and mouth and nose, and making sure that the angles are close to what they are in the reference photo. So here I realized that I drew his face a little too wide, and so he didn't really look like Nero to me. And this is where I was like, I kind of need to take a break from this drawing, because taking a break can also really help me refresh my eyes. It's like when you read a word too many times, it almost doesn't look like a word anymore. You guys have probably experienced that. It's the same thing with drawing for me. Like if I'm staring at my drawing too long, I start to lose the ability to compare it with the reference photo, so sometimes I really just have to step away. Here I'm fixing his eyes because I think the angle of his eyebrows relative to each other didn't look quite right. His left eye was a little too high, so I'm lowering it. here I'm like comparing it with the reference photo on Pinterest, zooming in and out, and then really trying to line it up correctly with the sides of the nose as mentioned before, and also the side of his face, and trying to make sure it's really correct this time so I don't have to erase it again. And after these adjustments, he was really starting to look like Nero here, so I was really happy. But I was not looking forward to drawing his hair because it looks so complicated. At this point, I felt that his proportions were looking pretty good, and I was like, dang, because he is fine. But I have to keep going and finish up his hair so he actually looks like not half-baked. So we've saved the worst part for last, and that is his hairstyle that looks so good but is so hard to draw, in my opinion. So I do this by separating his head into smaller chunks by laying down the shadows, and this is kind of the trend for all my drawings. Like, the shadows really help me find reference points for where the rest of the strokes should lay. So I'm separating his head into smaller chunks by laying down the darkest parts of his hair, and I lay the strokes in the same direction that they appear in the reference photo, also making sure to consider the thickness of his hair from his head. I will also mention that the ears usually start somewhere close to the bottom of the eyes, so that's a pretty helpful tip for me, so maybe for you too if you didn't already know. So here I was continuing to lay down the shadows, and I noticed that they were kind of in chunks. Also, I tried to mimic the appearance of many hairs on top of each other by drawing these hatched lines, and I think it worked. And while I'm drawing these chunks, I'm keeping in mind the relative position of them, so that's compared to other chunks on his head, maybe compared to his eyes also, and where they lie above that. At this point I was like, okay, it's looking pretty good. So I started adding the middle values, and I did this by kind of treating each light part as a chunk that had its own shadow and also its own highlight. So I'm shading in these lighter parts of his hair using the same hatching motions as before, making sure to keep the direction consistent with how the hairs lie on his head. And along the way, if I notice very dark outlines or very deep shadows I didn't notice before, I'll take the time to add them in then. And the way I draw these hair strands that are kind of stray and they kind of catch the light over top of all the rest of his hair is by using my handy dandy mechanical eraser. I literally don't know what I did before this. So I just erase over what I've already drawn, one or two strokes in the direction that I see in the reference photo. Also, the new Resident Evil 9 trailer, the second one, came out the other day, and I'm like really excited. Although I think it will be too scary for me, as I've mentioned before. But I love the characters. I love Resident Evil, so ooh, something to keep me going. And then here I was heightening the shadows, because the big problem that I have is sometimes the shadows aren't deep enough, especially on the face. But Well, I noticed it kind of blended into the top of his hair, so it looked like he just had a huge piece of hair on his forehead. And then I tried to erase some of it and keep the shadows a little lighter on his face. I feel like now he's mostly finished. He looks super hot, and now it's just kind of adding in the details and deepening some of the shadows, finishing up his shirt a little bit. Let me know if you guys enjoy this type of content where I try to explain what I'm doing, or even just like ranting about random things. And as I said before, I can also try to make a more in-depth tutorial about drawing characters in general, or even drawing a specific character if you guys would like to see that.